let's get started. Morning everyone, I hope everyone is well. Thank you for joining us today with Mannok. My name is Elizabeth and I'll be your host today. Before I introduce the speakers, let me just quickly run through the platform that we're using. You should see a question box in the panel to the right hand side. If you've got any questions, please pop them in there and we'll come back to them at the end of the session and they'll be answered by our speakers. So let me introduce you to our speakers. Firstly, we've got Paul Monaghan, is Mannok's Sustainability Manager and has led the development of the company's ambitious 2030 vision, its sustainability roadmap to the end of the decade. With a wealth of experience in a variety of technical support and leadership roles in the fields of environmental sustainability, health and safety, Paul is passionate about overcoming the decarbonisation challenge faced by the construction and manufacturing industries. He believes in the power of collaboration to achieve the end goal and actively works in partnership with a multitude of sustainability-focused bodies and industry organisations to further advance the decarbonisation drive. He will be joined today by Paul Carron. He is Mannok's Decarbonisation Engineering Manager and is leading the team of engineers working on a number of projects to decarbonise the company's cement production facilities. With over 20 years experience with Mannok, Paul is perfectly placed to head up the decarbonisation programme and is currently collaborating with numerous international teams and groups on research and development with a number of highly innovative projects in progress or in planning. I'll now hand you over to our first speaker, Paul Monaghan.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us. So what I'm going to do is hopefully maybe spend the next 40 minutes or so just walking you through our sustainability and decarbonisation plans and strategies to date, and we'll try and leave as much time as we can for anticipated Q&A. So I really look forward to it. So thank you. I'll just make sure we get the presentation, make sure we get the technicalities right first of all. Put it in presenter mode. Okay, so hopefully, if that's okay, and if it's not, you can let me know. So,
it's all good, Paul.
Yep, sorry. We'll actually go back up. We're through. So, yep. So the theme for today is our decarbonisation challenge and Mannok's net zero roadmap. So Elizabeth, thanks for the introductions to that. I've already been through the speakers, so not going to dwell on that. And just go through the agenda. So again, just thanks for the introductions. We're going to look at Mannok's operations just as an introduction for people maybe who are maybe not as familiar as we are with Mannok. The Mannok 2030 vision, which is our sustainability strategy, sustainability in action in terms of maybe just bringing you up to speed in some of the things that we've been doing to date. We're going to talk then about the carbon challenge and things around emissions, and then we'll kind of get really into the meat of it in terms of talking about, you know, some of the major decarbonisation efforts, you know, that we're working on to deliver for the business to reduce its emissions and ultimately, you know, net zero carbon. We'll look at beyond 2030 in terms of, so our sustainability strategy is 2030, but in terms of, you know, maybe other things that are going to get us to net zero beyond that, and then we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So to look at the business here, we are basically a UK registered company located here in Fermanagh in Northern Ireland. My cursor works here anyway, but I'm just kind of sitting here today. I think Paul Carron is down the road in our cement factory, but that's probably just the people realise that we're located on the border there. So we're HQ'd in Northern Ireland, and that's the location of our downstream concrete manufacturing products and quarry material, or HQ, and also an innovation academy that houses kind of events and training and stuff like that. But we do have substantial manufacturing assets in Southern Ireland, which is our main cement factory. We also have a PIR installation board, manufacturing facility, and as part of our building products portfolio. And we have a standalone packaging division too as well, which is kind of like non-building products, but is within our portfolio of products. And just that's not within that kind of, I mean, all of these different divisions are located within, you know, a kind of 3 to 5 kilometre radius of each other. And we have one other manufacturing facilities that's located in the Midlands of Ireland, a kind of an EPS installation facility that's also part of the product family too as well. And just the graphic that you have there in the bottom right hand side is just really showing, I suppose, a kind of our mixed load kind of format that we have, that logistically and is financially and carbon efficient, is because we have a full range of products. What we're able to deliver into our customers in the UK and Ireland is a range of different products, from cement to precast products like, say, roof tiles. And what we're able to do is top that up with other products such as PIR insulation. So that whole thing kind of makes sense for us, and, you know, is quite carbon efficient. And just some numbers there, just to give the scale of the operation there. I suppose these are 2021 figures, so 270 million turnover and over 800 employees. And again, we're just going to go now into our Mannok 2030 vision. So this is the long-term business sustainability strategy, and it's from 2021 out to 2030. So our sustainability strategy is probably built on 3 main foundational pillars, and we decided on those that would be our people, our planet, and our partners. And that is aligned also with an important membership that we have here with business in the community, which is very much focused on corporate social responsibility and business and community involvement with that. We've also aligned that with UN sustainability development goals, and we've picked out 7 of those that we believe are currently materially relevant to the business at this time. And so very much kind of that thing of thinking globally and acting locally. We're also aligned with the Paris Agreement, so, you know, keeping our emissions in target with a global temperature rise of less than 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And also just to say too as well is that overall within the strategy we have 36 specific and ambitious targets outlined in the strategy, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. But look, ultimately the strategy is key for a long-term success, and that will contribute to the economic, social and environmental prosperity of the business and the community in which we serve as well. This is just to give an idea in terms of the main milestones that are split out, the different milestones that we need to hit on an annual basis over the 10 plus years. And you can see there too as well, we have some extended stretch targets, particularly for the decarbonisation of our fleet out beyond 2030, so kind of taking us out to kind of, you know, 2040. And if we look there on the right hand side and we look at our pillars, which are colour coded into our people, planet, partners, just to say too as well, within each pillar we have 3 main priorities. So under people we've got safety, well-being, continuous learning. Planet, we have climate change, resource efficiency, circular economy, biodiversity, and partners we have community, suppliers and our customers. This here is I suppose a little bit of sustainability in action, but also just saying who we are. So the many different initiatives that we're engaged in, particularly in the community and with important partners that are outlined there. Some international partners, technology providers, local government agencies, funders, third level institutions. All of these are very, very important to be able to, I suppose, deliver on the Mannok 2030 vision. In the middle there is when we created and published the sustainability strategy, we put in place a new governance structure. At the bottom of it there, you can see our sustainability working group that meets on a monthly basis, which I chair. And we've had a number of meetings this year And just to make sure, I suppose I have responsibility for coordinating the implementation of the Sustainability Action Plan. You can also see across there too as well how the company's outlined its purpose, its mission, its vision and its values, and that's probably important just as being a unifier or a motivator for all of our business and our employees and our partners there too as well. So that's kind of important for the business too as well. This is just a little bit of a highlight there, so of a baseline in terms of, well, what have we done to date, and before we go on and talk about what we're going to do in the future. So you can see a lot of different biodiversity initiatives that are very, very important to us. Native indigenous trees planting, wildflowers, Ireland's first kestrel cam that we live stream from returning kestrels up in one of our active quarries. Below you can kind of see elements of kind of resource efficiency and circular economy, various different energy, waste, water initiatives, and also last year we put in for the first time EV chargers and zero emission vans to replace diesel equivalents too as well. So small steps but important steps on our road to decarbonise. In cement, looking at the carbon challenge, so obviously we work in the cement industry and building products. We are very, very carbon intensive. How carbon intensive are we? Well, I suppose our baseline year of our emissions was 2020, so we were kind of in the region of about 766,000 tons. The overwhelming majority of the emissions are assigned to our cement manufacturing, and we'll maybe go into more details of why that is. But 98% of the group emissions are assigned to our cement, so there's obviously a huge focus to decarbonise that part of the business. And then it's made up by just the other divisions, such as our Mannok build in Northern Ireland, and then our other parts of the business such as packaging and insulation that we discussed earlier on. Then if we look at some of the processes, so what makes up for that 98% of emissions is kind of broken down roughly by 35% or a third by fuels, by fossil fuels, but actually the majority of the emissions are made up by a process called calcination, and what that is the burning of limestone at very, very high temperatures, and that is basically emits significant quantities of CO2 emissions. So even if we were to remove all of the fossil fuels in the combustion process out of the equation, you would still roughly have about 60% or 2/3 of your emissions outside of that. So we're going to maybe explore ways in terms of, what can we do about that? What can the cement industry do about that? What can Mannok do about that too as well? So just also to say too as well, I mean, the calcination process in your fossil fuel burning is part of what's called your Scope 1 emissions, which are your direct emissions, which some of you might be familiar with from a reporting point of view. And then from a Scope 2 emissions point of view, which is principally for us really electricity, is over 93% of the electricity that we source is actually zero emission green electricity, and that does help reduce our emissions in the region of about 48,000 tons. So that kind of if we didn't have that, that would bring our emissions over 800,000 tons per annum too as well. And then just to mention, just as a footnote too as well, is we do have a requirement to report on our Scope 1 and 2 emissions, but we are, and it is an action within our sustainability strategy, is we're currently developing a Scope 3 emissions action plan, and that's, as anybody who knows in terms of Scope 3 supply chain, that's quite a significant undertaking. Then I hope you enjoy this visual just in terms of our journey, our carbon journey, our cement manufacturing journey. And if I maybe just draw your attention to the year 2014, that was the year that we introduced what is called SRF, or solid recovered fuel. And principally, the cement industry has reduced its fossil fuel dependency and decarbonised, and has reduced its emissions by the use of this alternative fuel, or SRF, material. So we introduced it here in 2014, and if we take that trip out to 2020, or baseline year, we would have reduced our emissions by 11.5% per tonne of clinker. And clinker is an intermediary product of the cement making process. So that's when you calcine, you burn your limestone at high temperatures, and just before it becomes cement there too as well. And then beyond that, beyond 2020 out to 2030, you can see then the target that we have in our strategy is to reduce by a further 33% of our emissions there too as well. And we'll get into some detail in terms of how we can achieve that. So if we look at some of our major decarbonisation pathways, here is, we've already discussed our target, which is based on Scope 1 and 2 emissions, and we'll look at the Scope 3 emissions. We'll set separate targets for them probably into next year. We've identified the key 9 major projects that we'll go into a little bit more detail on, of how we'll decarbonise during this decade and beyond. And they're roughly split into 5 different categories. And that's alternative fuels, energy efficiency, alternative energy, alternative raw materials, and what's, I suppose, commonly referred to as CCUS, or carbon capture, use and storage. And that includes a mix of research, development, innovation, new tech deployments, focusing on lower carbon materials, products, and engineering solutions. And in addition to the 33% emission reduction, there's an interlocking target of the main product that we produce, which is our cement, is to reduce that carbon intensity to at least 550 kilograms of CO2 per tonne of cementitious material by 2030. So again, that's a common kind of target, a metric within the cement industry, out to 2030 and beyond there too as well. And the graphic on the right hand side is just some of the percentages that will help us deliver. That adds up to the 33% emission reduction there too as well. Okay, so we're going to start maybe talking, and I'll bring in my colleague Paul Carron too as well into the conversation. We'll start talking about some of these individual projects or decarbonisation pathways. So one of the major projects is the potential to produce green hydrogen and use that in a variety of different ways. But that would, I suppose, be a paradigm shift for the company. I suppose, like, you know, many of you of you know, being dependent on fossil fuels and being dependent on, you know, diesel in your fleet and so on like that, have the ability to both locally produce green energy, but also be an off-taker, because we have a significant fleet of vehicles and also a variety of vehicles in our quarries, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on that there too as well. So I would say, in terms of, you know, what we have done in that area today, is we've worked with our technology partners, our funders, government agencies, to do kind of feasibility studies, and they have proved positive, and we're looking now to move on to the next stages of that into different feed studies and detailed engineering design in that area. So that's quite an exciting space, and I always joke that that since I've come into this role, I've probably been on more calls on hydrogen because it's such a hot topic than any other single item too as well. So people are quite excited about the potential of what that can do, and so are we. And we have an interesting concept later on in the presentation we call Energy Valley that we would like to share with you too as well. So what I'm going to do for the remainder of this slide is just hand over to my colleague Paul Carron, if he wants to talk about the other 3 projects there too as well. Thanks, Paul.
All right, thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. Well, as Paul mentioned there, we're looking to hydrogen. The other thing we have here at the moment is we're an ongoing R&D project, and that should be probably signed off towards the end of this year. It's an adaptation of our calciner and our feeding system in the tower. Effectively, what that does is it allows us to burn more SRF and on the back end, and with ultimate goal of coming to probably 100% SRF borne out on the calciner side. It also has a lot more potential further on down the line, but the first phase of that project's coming near completion now over the next couple of months. And then we're currently looking at investigating at the moment. Something we haven't done in the past is looking at putting SRF in at the front end and in the main burner. So that's the first phase of a burner modification, and we're looking at doing on that side. The other thing we're looking at then after that in the second phase will be to introduce other alternative fuels to the main burner, i.e. oxygen, hydrogen. The hydrogen's an interesting one because a byproduct of the hydrogen production is oxygen, so we would probably have a use for that in the main burner, and again it helps the burn out of SRF along with everything else. And the other thing we can look at as well along the line is hydrogen. How it all combines now is a different story. SRF is the main one at the moment, and oxygen definitely gives you a benefit in burning out. The other thing that oxygen does as well later on down the line is it leaves it easier for carbon capture from your main stack, because you're burning more pure fuel and you don't have as many of the volatiles, nitrogen or whatever, to be taken out of the gas stream on the carbon side. So that's the first phase of that's in design and preparation at the moment, so we're hoping to get proposal on that now over the next week or so and progress then to the detailed design after that. So
okay. We'll go on to the next slide, Paul. You okay there?
Yeah. So we're following that up then with the other thing that we're looking at the moment. Again, it's on that original sheet that Paul talked about, our alternative energies. One of the things that I suppose is becoming more important at the present time with the high energy costs is where can you get alternative energy? In the past, for us, waste heat recovery would have been a nice to have, but the investment required at the time and the return on investment with the price of energy that we did have left it that your return was you're looking at 5-6 years for return, maybe 10 years in some cases. Whereas now with the increase in price in energy, heat recovery has become more attractive. The technology is basically the same as it was 10 years ago. I'm sure there'll be some improvements, but the whole thing has become more important. And on a cement plant, typically we can generate anything between 3 and 5.5 megawatts. More ambitious companies will tell you can get up on 7, but if you look at what's realistic on a consistent basis, you're looking probably 4 to 5. So it'll be somewhere in that region that we'll be looking at. So we're engaging with a few companies on that at the moment. The other thing we've been doing, and we have it over the last number of years, is our ISO 50001 from our energy management. But again, it's a cement plant. It's a massive user of energy, and it's it's small numbers that when you can streamline it and stuff like that. Energy metering and monitoring. We've been metering most of our main incomers here for the last 10 years or so. We're upgrading that system at the moment, and the company as a group is looking at a across the board monitoring so they can monitor the energy on the whole business. And that'll have huge gains as well, because everybody can see then what they're using and how important it is to turn the lights off when you're leaving the room. It's small gains, but a lot of small gains is a big gain at the end of the day. So
Very good.
Back to Paul on the Project Plus, etc.
Yeah, so this is quite an interesting project too as well. So a kind of a collaborative partner that's done in conjunction with, co-funded with Innovate UK. It's a project that's been running for some time. It is due to draw to a conclusion later on this year. But effectively, one of the key ways that you can decarbonize your whole process is from that, what we talked about earlier, the burning of the limestone that we quarry locally at really high temperatures. Is if you can source these locally sourced clays, is you can blend them. If displace the cementitious material, you use less of the limestone, and you can also burn it at a much lower temperature. So typically, I think in the region of about 800 degrees or so on. So ultimately, that leads to significantly less emissions in that process. You're probably talking about 20 to 40% or so on. And what that produces then, it produces a kind of a lower carbon product. So a limestone calcine clay cement, or what is termed in the industry as an LC3, or for us would be a kind of like a CEM3 product. So effectively a lower carbon product. So so that in terms of the stage that project is at an investigative stage in terms of sourcing the local clay material. And if the conclusion of that project is positive and successful, that means then it would trigger then a significant investment in the company in terms of a capital project to basically deliver the facilities that would be able to enable that process, and therefore the emission reduction. So though, again, that's quite an exciting project to be involved in. And the next one there, we're going to basically talk about carbon capture, use and storage. So I'm going to hand back over to Paul, and he's going to take the top half, and I'll come back and take the bottom half there. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, the flue stack carbon capture, I suppose at the end of the day, it's a big one. And the question on everybody's lips after that is what you do with the CO2. But initially, anyway, it's something that everybody has to look into and investigate. And we have a few feasibilities on it at the moment. And initial stages would be to install something small, containerized system, and prove that it works. And then again, that once you have that proven, it'll be brought into a capital investment stage. The future of it then is, what do you do with the CO2? Like what Paul will come on to later on is their energy valley concept and the possibility for e-fuels and etc. So everything follows through from generating hydrogen to generating oxygen to improving your ability to capture pure CO2 to producing e-fuel. So there's a plan, and it'll become more apparent later on. But there's a plan there the whole way through, and what you actually do with the captured CO2. The other thing here is flue dust system. We've working with the company Carbonate to investigate capturing our flue dust with stack emissions, and it combines the CO2 with the flue dust to create an aggregate that can be used in the put back into the system, whether it would be ready mix or blocks or whatever. So that's actually an investigation stage at the moment. There's our stack emissions are being analysed, and the dust that we have available to us has been analysed at the moment as well. So all those things are in progress at the moment, and again, it'll all be a containerized version to carry out trials when it goes to trial stage, and following on from trials, then it'll be for a more capex intensive equipment and installation after that. So
yeah, so probably important to say too as well is when we were looking at earlier on in the carbon challenge, and we were talking about those 60+% to 2/3 of the emissions that are associated with the calcination process, which is non-fossil fuel based, is really the way to attack that within the cement industry is through carbon capture, but also through the alternative raw materials, those calcine clays that we were talking about. They're the two principal ways that we're exploring at the moment. The other carbon capture technology we're actively looking at the moment is carbon cure, where you take a source of CO2 and you inject it typically into a wet mix, and it has the same reaction in terms of there's a carbonation and a mineralization where it's permanently sequestered within the ready mix when it's poured and set. And so we are actively working on that to move it forward to implementation. So you can even see within the carbon capture area, it's not one solution or one silver bullet. It's a number of different things that you need to do kind of concurrently, and kind of bring it up through pilot, through scale up, and so on. And the other area that's quite interesting and maybe a little bit unique for Mannok too as well is over the last couple of years we commissioned with a local charity, Ulster Wildlife here, a natural assets action plan, which was a comprehensive survey of our land assets, which are quite substantial, and it looked at it from a biodiversity point of view, but also interestingly from a carbon assets point of view, and it did a series of calculations in that area and the potential of that to sequester levels of carbon, both now as a baseline, but also in the future. And we've set some targets around that in our Mannok 2030 vision. So that's just a kind of a little bit of a snapshot in terms of coming off the report. And it's effectively a 25-year action plan to enhance and protect and restore the lands and the various different species, and some of them are red listed species and protected species and so on like that. And also, if I draw your attention then maybe over towards the right hand side, there's some calculations done there in terms of carbon assets. So you'll see that figure there in terms of the carbon sequestration potential of the vegetation, which is typically the grasslands and the trees, of 717 tons of carbon per year. Now, what that translates to in terms from carbon into CO2 equivalent is about 2,600 tons per annum that it sequesters, and we have a target in our strategy to double that rate by 2030 on an annualized basis. And then we'll just look at kind of beyond our 2030 vision and our Mannok, our Energy Valley concept. So just the context of this really is we're looking at a 15-year transformation program to afford us some degree of energy independence, and particularly, of course, with the energy and carbon inflation and the volatility, which is not really going away anytime soon. So that we're looking at potentially replacing up to 4 million litres of diesel that we currently use in our fleet, and to decarbonise and take out over 500,000 tonnes of CO2 out of our cement manufacturing process. And what that will translate into is this will power our downstream and related manufacturing facilities with new 150 gigawatt hours of renewable energy, which is probably equivalent to 150 megawatts installed capacity, solar and wind and so on per year. And so what does that look like visually in this graphic? So what we will take here is there is existing wind assets that that are located beside us here. We're able to use some of that, particularly unused curtail, but also some of the base load capacity, run it up through an electrolyzer to produce hydrogen, and we would be able to start the journey of decarbonisation of the fleet. We see that as being an early off-taker. It makes sense for us, given that we have a tethered fleet, which means we refuel at base. So we send the trucks out and we refuel back at base. So we might do that a number of times during the day. And as Paul alluded to there, one of the byproducts of the hydrolysis hydrogen production is oxygen, and we have a ready-made industrial off-taker in terms of our cement manufacturing process there that can be used too as well. In phase 2, then, what that would mean over the next 10 to 15 years is then building out our own renewable energy assets too as well. So, you know, solar, wind, maybe also some battery backup, if that makes sense too as well. So we would potentially have green molecules in hydrogen, but also green electrons in terms of battery storage, if it makes sense to do so. And then on the stage 3 there, what that also means too as well, together with carbon capture, we can intersect that with hydrogen and the potential to make e-fuels or synthetic fuels, and that could be your DME or your methanol. And we could either use that locally, but also, I suppose, as a green energy producer, or make of synthetic fuels with a lot of carbon capture that we have from our processes. Is you have the potential there to not only power your own facilities in your fleet, but potentially you could either spill that over into the grid, the excess, or you could use that for other potential customers or off-takers too as well. And so basically what that means as well, and Mannok being a significant landowner, we own about 750 hectares of land on the island of Ireland, is that makes it particularly viable and potentially one-off concept. We're in a high wind, one of the highest wind areas in the country. We have a localized fleet here, and so we have the hydrogen off-taker demand. We also have a high demand for the oxygen, the byproduct that we can use straight away or on a scaled up basis in our cement factory. And we obviously have the different manufacturing technology base there, so we can rapidly adapt to new generation of renewable fuels, including the green hydrogen, the oxy-fuel, the oxygen, and the synthetic fuels too as well. And that also means too as well, because there are already a number of wind farms in the local area, is we can use existing access that's already there and utility infrastructure, which will just streamline the delivery of the Energy Valley concept. So quite unique, quite one-off, and quite excited about what that can do for the business over the next 10 or 15 years or beyond. And then, look, we're coming towards near the end of the presentation here. So if we look there at the initial progress, so what the business has done to date, it has mainly focused on the alternative fuel use and that 11.5% emission reduction per tonne of clinker. Energy efficiency measures, particularly around our energy management standard and our metering and monitoring, the ISO 50001. And we also have a kind of SM2 or slightly lower carbon product at the moment in our portfolio, which is basically you displace some of the cementitious material with unburnt raw meal or limestone within the mix there too as well. And there is a growing kind of demand or focus on that particular product as well. And then if we move on in terms of space we're occupying now at the moment, and this is really as you would hear, the decade of action is we have a Mannok 2030 vision that we've been through there. So we need to deliver on our multi-annual, even multi-decade ambitious targets, our decarbonisation pathways, and our Energy Valley concept too as well. And we need to turn that concept into a reality, and we're committed to do that, to make that investment. And then if we will look out then beyond 2030 in terms of what it's going to take to get us to kind of, you know, carbon neutrality or net zero carbon, what you're talking about then is really a completely phase out of all of the fossil fuels. You're looking at zero emission fleet and vehicles, carbon capture, sequestration, and that will lead to net zero processes, products and services. So many of the decarbonisation pathways and projects that we've just talked about there, you're going to be doing a lot of initial piloting studies, and you're going to start to scale up in the decade ahead, but then you're going to be looking at full deployments and then beyond 2030 to get to a point of really reducing your emissions as much as possible. Yeah, so full deployments of the technologies to get to zero. And I suppose then really just to spend a minute or two just to sum up with the overall position is we published our sustainability strategy back in May. And at the same time, we also announced the investment in our Energy Valley concept. So that's based on CO2 and energy reduction as a top priority for Mannok. You see our targets there of 33% emission reduction and our 550 kilograms of CO2 per ton of cementitious material. And this will enable a number of key infrastructural projects. New alternative fuel project that we've spoken about there to significantly increase our SRF use, which will displace fossil fuels. And there'll be an announcement on that probably later on in the year. Accelerated carbonation project, so to our carbonate or collaboration with them. Our Energy Valley concept though is a game changer, and we're in the early stages of that. So again, with the hydrogen, we have done a feasibility study with the support of Invest&I, and we're looking to examine options now for prototyping, installation, and including hydrogen vehicles. And that will require substantial support, and we're already talking to people about that. There'll be major new renewable infrastructure that will help lead to energy independence, and that might also mean that we can take some of that capacity off a constrained grid. And so, from a national point of view, in terms of helping a constrained grid and contributing as an industry to the national emissions target, there's a lot of interest from our government partners on that too as well. And so from a carbon capture, use and storage point of view, these are key early stage technologies that we need to deploy to achieve our 2030 and 2050 targets. And that's just the same really for the cement industry in general. And we are engaged with new research and proof of concept projects. And I suppose a major focus of ours at the moment is really on that research development and innovation to scale up from what projects we're going to bring up through proposal to pilot, then to scale up to full deployment to help deliver on those targets. So that's the presentation, folks. Thanks for listening. I hope that's been useful. And yeah, we're finished right on time. I think 11:45. So I'll hand it back to Elizabeth, and happy to take any questions. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Paul and Paul. That was really informative and engaging. I've got a couple of questions here at the minute. Do you have a support strategy of third world countries?
What we have, I suppose, is we have alignment with the UN Sustainability Development Goals, and so I suppose there's a strong community focus, but it probably is more locally focused, if I could say that, because I suppose the company, given its location on the border there, is probably, you know, regionally one of the biggest employers here. So we don't have one specifically for the third world, but we do have a strong commitment from a corporate social responsibility to our employees and our external partners here in the local area, because the business is regionally, you know, very, very significant.
Okay, great. Someone said, we're interested to know more about cement projects. Are you open to having a separate meeting with our local government? Yeah,
I mean, we're certainly, if people reach out to me, I think we're going to, you know, share information in my email details. So certainly, if you want to come back to me, if you've got questions, if there's any follow-up meetings, I'm certainly happy to explore that with you.
Okay, great. I've got another one here. I would also be interested in developing world, in particular sand use and environmental impacts.
Okay, that's is that from a kind of an EIA, a kind of environmental impact assessment point of view, is it?
I think so, yeah. I can't see what company they work for, but this is Daniel Rigamonti. I'll give you his email address if you want to contact him through email. Yeah,
if he wants to contact me, maybe he's interested in the journey, and maybe how we can support that, maybe from a planning or an EIA point of view, because obviously we've got some very, very big projects. They're going to take quite a lot of planning. There will be a lot of different studies and assessments locally, whether it's noise or ecology, or other various different surveys, you know, of the local biodiversity and so on like that. So yeah, happy to take those inquiries.
He's just said they worked in Gambia.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, no Gambia, all right, yeah.
Okay, great. I've got another one here. Paul, this is a very impressive programme. Can you outline the key drivers from the company's point of view, and to what extent is senior management involved in driving it forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose, I mean, I would say, I suppose my job is to advise the board and the CEO, and I think they have to be commended. I think what you have here is kind of two sides of the same coin. So I suppose you have the sustainability strategy and the action plan that goes with that, and on the other side, then you have the Energy Valley concept. So I would say the board has been very supportive and has kind of come full 180 on this journey, because it probably started as a kind of like you know, let's do the strategy and develop an action plan and kind of get some projects going. And that was kind of like the whole Hydrogen Valley part of it. You know, we've identified that as one of the early projects that we could potentially deliver that would make sense with the fleet. But then that kind of developed from a Hydrogen Valley concept more to a fully kind of Energy Valley and energy independence concept. So yeah, so I would say, you know, the main, I mean, the main drivers, I mean, to be honest with you, are there's some practical realities in all of this, in that we know as a very carbon intensive business that if we don't do this as an entity, it'll really struggle, you know, to be viable and to survive here, you know, in the next 10 years and beyond. And I think then that there is that thing that, you know, one of the things that I've felt since I've come into the community is that really close connection that it has, and deeply rooted in the community here. Obviously, it draws its employees from several different surrounding counties, including myself. And I think Mannok has been a force for good as a business, and a significant employer and provider of training and skills. And it's larger, I suppose, societal responsibility to you know, reduce its emissions and therefore reduce its impact on the environment. I think that really all adds up to what are the main drivers for the business.
Great. I've got another one here. Do you provide EPDs for your products, and will you update them regularly as you decarbonise your production line?
Okay, you're a bit faint there, Elizabeth. I got EPDs at the beginning. I'm not sure what the second half of the sentence was, but the answer to the question is that we do have EPDs, so environmental product declarations. And if you look at the IGBC, so the Irish Green Building Council website, and you go in there, look at it, search under EPDs and Mannok or various different product portfolios, is its product families, is we have, I think it is five or six EPDs that we have on the website there. So yeah, they are publicly available.
Okay, great. The second half of that question was, will you update them regularly as you decarbonise your production line?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, my understanding is typically you would update your EPDs on a 5-year cycle, but it's I mean, I don't want to kind of say, you know, we're going to do it exactly early days on these particular years or dates or whatever. But I mean, you know, if we deliver significant projects and that decarbonize the business within that 5-year cycle, then I think it's, you know, it's likely that we would go back in there and revise them on a more frequent basis, as it makes, I'm sure the audience understands, as it makes sense to do so. So certainly, yes, we would be committed to doing that.
Okay, great. I've got another one here. What is the position on water usage and waste?
Water usage and waste. Yeah, I mean, we on the water, I suppose what we have is we've committed within the strategy to develop a water conservation action plan and put in some targets in terms of from a water conservation point of view there. So yeah, I mean, we're a significant user of water, and that would be in the context of our planet pillar and a priority under resource efficiency in the circular economy. So obviously we're going to have to do some work, and we have some commitments around that within the sustainability strategy. On waste, the vast majority of our waste is diverted away from landfill. Some of it is repurposed and reprocessed into the SRF, alternative fuel material, and but we do have a zero waste to landfill and zero process waste, I think, up to 2025 and 2030 targets within the sustainability strategy, and I think that's going to be shared, or you'll have access to the audience to that document after this webinar.
Okay, great. I've got another one here. Where will they procure their new vehicle fleet?
where we can get it at best value. It's very challenging, I have to tell you. The supply chains, even to get the smaller vehicles from dealerships or OEMs, the smaller EV vans was actually quite challenging on lead times and what was available, and but we managed to get them. Obviously, if you're talking about, a lot of our fleet is HGVs, and they're 44 tonners. And then obviously we have the quarry vehicles, which can be even heavier than that. You can kind of go into, when we've got tippers and stuff like that. So you can get into the, 50 tons and stuff like that too as well. So obviously, if you're looking at the larger vehicles and you're looking at battery electric, or you're looking at hydrogen fuel cell, we are talking to a number of different OEMs and partners at the moment in terms of how that could be delivered, but we are reasonably confident that we can start delivering that something there to help decarbonize the larger weight class vehicles in the next few years, which is going to take us to deliver the hydrogen project to be able to produce our own hydrogen anyway. So yeah, we are talking to a number of different technology and truck and vehicle OEMs to help us deliver on that.
Great. I've got another one here. The projects identified are ambitious and commendable. How will it be funded? Green grants or partnerships or internal funding?
Combination.
I think
combination of all three.
Yeah, I think first of all is particularly if you're looking at the green energy projects, you'll have a lot of interest in those from external funders, because they're quite attractive in terms of whether they're long-term contracts. It depends the way that you want to structure it. Long-term contracts, feed-in tariffs, so I think there's a number of different ways. I think some of the smaller projects you might fund off your own balance sheet, and then the larger, really big ones, you're maybe having to go to your investors or external investors. And I think also too as well, just the scale of the investments. If you look at that, even for just one business and one cement factory like Mannok, you're probably talking about in the hundreds of millions of euros or pounds. Just for one business. So there is an element of that there'll be co-funding hopefully from the government too as well. So I think there are schemes and there are funding opportunities there, and we will probably draw down on all of those as it makes sense to do so.
Okay, I've got one more. Have you looked at the introduction of biochar into the products? Do you see any future in this?
So you basically have a product there that is already permanently sequestered carbon, and then you use it maybe downstream in some of your products and stuff like that. I have looked at biochar. I'm familiar with the concept. I haven't looked at it in any great detail. I suppose what I would say by way of answering that is we obviously have a lot of carbon. We emit a lot of carbon. So in first principles, our approach is to look at carbon as a resource. So when we capture that carbon, and whether that's a gas or we convert it into an aggregate, which Paul spoke about in terms of the flue dust, which is a byproduct of using alternative fuel, and the Carbon8 project is, in first principles, we would look to use that downstream in our cement or building products. So how much of that can we incorporate into our own processes? Now, whether we take in external product like biochar, I'm not sure. I think we'll probably have enough carbon ourselves to probably deal with in the first instance before we start taking in anyone else's carbon.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I have. Obviously, if I give you those people's email addresses, you can just follow up with them a bit further. So thank you both for your presentation today. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Just to let everyone know, there'll be a survey which Mannok have put together. It will appear after the webinar ends, and it will also be emailed to you. So if you could just take a few minutes to fill this out for them, that would be great. But other than that, I think that's everything. So thank you very much, Paul and Paul, for joining me. And I hope everyone has a lovely day.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank
Take care.
you.